Hi, welcome to this session. It's Ask Experts Deploying Secure Passwordless Solutions. I want to start with a couple of quick reminders. You can use the chat to ask questions. Questions will appear to all attendees once approved by the moderator. If you do see a question that you like, go ahead and upvote it, and we'll try to get to those first. Experts will answer questions verbally and over the chat, depending on the question. We also have some experts in the background that will help to answer questions as well. And we'll provide some resources once the session concludes to learn more. And again, this session may be recorded, and please do not post inappropriate comments and adhere to the Microsoft Code of Conduct. Here's a quick glance at the Microsoft Code of Conduct. So my name is Melanie. I am Senior Product Marketing Manager for the Identity team, and I am so excited to bring to you these subject matter experts. I will let each of them introduce themselves, so starting with Tarek.
Thank you, Melanie. Hi, everyone. My name is Tarek Dawood. I'm a program manager in the Identity Division's customer success team. I'm a lead architect in this team.
And then Inbar.
Hey everyone, my name is Inbar Cesar Kobrinsky. I'm a program manager in Azure ID working on authentication methods, including temporary access.
And Libby.
Hey folks, my name is Libby Brown. I'm also Senior Program Manager in Microsoft Identity, and I've been shepherding our passwordless initiatives, including passwordless phone sign-in with the Microsoft Authenticator, as well as our FIDO2 security keys implementation.
Thank you. So you can ask these experts any questions that you have. I did want to just keep this here in case we can answer your questions through one of these links. I also have listed here everything that we announced in the blogs that you can go to those blog links on the right for more details, and you can ask about any of these updates during this session. So let's kick it off. So thank you, already seeing some questions being popped through. Let's start with this one. Libby, this one's for you. How is passwordless more secure? Like, why should people go passwordless, and kind of along those lines, you know, what really is wrong with passwords?
So thanks, Melanie. I hope the people who are following our passwordless journey have already, you know, had this sink in. But fundamentally, passwords are just insecure. It is something that if any bad guy knows your password, they can use it against you to access your resources. It doesn't matter whether they're, you know, local to your organization or outside your organization. We know data shows that more than 80% of all modern security breaches are related to password attacks and phishing and hacking. We have plenty of information about why your passwords don't matter. See that bottom blog in terms of like how secure they are. Why we are big proponents of passwordless is one, it removes that attack vector of the password itself. It ties a credential to a device that the user has and gives them a PIN or biometric gesture to do that MFA strong secure factor. Windows Hello for Business, FIDO2 security keys, those are unphishable. There is no way for a man in the middle to come through and use that hack before you or attack against you. It's just those strengths that we are so excited about to bring forward with passwordless GA. Tarek, I don't know if you want to add any more to that.
In the interest of time, I'll just say passwords are a shared symmetric secret, right? So that's the one fundamental line, is that for the user to use them, they have to expose the actual private secret and put it in the clear to submit it. So that's the fundamental flaw in password that we've been trying to move. All of the options we're talking about today are asymmetric, and the private key doesn't leave the device. That's kind of the coolness of all these features.
Yeah, just to follow up with that, Tarek, why is passwordless better user experience than, you know, passwords or even just traditional MFA? And where should people start in choosing the right passwordless methods?
Passwordless moves the needle in a few directions, right? So on the one hand, it makes phishing attacks kind of obsolete. If a user sees a phishing prompt, they will be surprised. If you like, we have a pilot within Microsoft where we've moved some users to where we scramble their passwords. They're using only passwordless method, and we've even scrambled their passwords. So if such a user even sees such a prompt, they're shocked. Like, what can I do if I can't even satisfy it, and I'm not expecting it? So this makes phishing is about 33% of password compromises or attacks, and password compromises themselves are 80% of attacks. And so this is how we kind of hope to move the needle. The other thing is, as Libby mentioned, is that it's unphishable. It's not just hype. It is technically in the protocol. If you double click on the FIDO2 specifications, and I highly recommend folks go check them out, you will see that there is no secret traveling on the cable for or on the internet, connection for a bad guy to intercept in the middle and replay back at the service. And so those two things make it a game changer in terms of security. The other thing it allows, and because it's standards based, it's not just you're not betting on Microsoft. You're not betting on a proprietary solution. It is standards based. It's also allowing innovation. So we're starting to see beautiful solutions where a user can authenticate with a band on their hand that is checking for pulse all the time, so it hasn't been removed from their body at all, and so they can just pass the gesture by the device and sign in right away. So a lot of this innovation you couldn't do back when everything was tied to the authentication prompt, and so that's a few examples of how it moves the needle.
Thank you. Another one that we have coming in is about temporary access pass. So Inbar, what is a temporary access pass, and how should people go about using it?
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. Yeah, so to truly be a passwordless user shouldn't know or use their password even to set up their account and when they need to recover access to their account. That's why we introduced temporary access pass. It's a time-limited passcode that can be also limited to a one-time use that the user can use in order to register passwordless authentication method and manage their passwordless methods, recover access to their account. In terms of how customers should be thinking about it, we have the authentication method policy for temporary access pass. This allows customers to harden security around the temporary access pass as much as this makes sense for customers. So they can limit the duration of the temporary access pass to be very short-lived. They can make it a one-time use. They can scope it to specific users and groups who can use temporary access pass. And then we have both the Azure ID portal and the Microsoft Graph APIs that will allow customers to issue temporary access pass on their users. And if you're using the Microsoft Graph APIs, it really makes it easier for you to incorporate the TAP issuance into your existing processes for onboarding and recovery.
And as a follow-up, how specifically do we send the temporary access pass to the user? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so this is very interesting, and we're seeing a lot of different patterns from the private preview, and I can give a few examples. We have a customer who has hybrid environment. They're using on-premise smart card, and they were looking to use FIDO2 security keys with their Azure ID federated applications. So they decided to basically use an existing on-prem tool that used a smart card to authenticate. So users can issue a temporary access pass or request access pass for themselves, and then use that temporary access pass to go and register their FIDO key in Azure ID. We also are seeing customers who are taking this opportunity to rethink their whole onboarding experience and think about it in the context of remote workers, having some remote identity proofing, building their own applications, which after the identity proofing, which is done by someone who remotely verify your identity, they will issue a temporary access pass and send it to the user over this application, which the user can then use in the Authenticator app to bootstrap their passwordless credentials.
Thank you. A quick question on licensing. What license is required for passwordless authentication? Do you want to take that one, Tarek?
Sure thing. Just typing an answer. So passwordless methods configuration and registration usage by the users. There's no licensing check. There is no specific license queue required. However, in full transparency, the passwordless methods require MFA, for example, to set up, or Inbar, I believe, for temporary access pass, I believe P1 is required, and so Azure Active Directory, or you can correct me if I'm misstating in this.
No, that's available through the all tiers, similar to the passwordless methods. Temporary access pass.
So if you're relying on MFA, then you will need a P1 license of some sort. If you're relying on, I guess, on TAP, then you won't. So, and Azure AD Premium is part of EMS and part of M365. So, but if you just have an Office license, then you can still bootstrap and onboard with TAP, I believe.
Thank you. Right. Libby, this one's for you. Is there the possibility to force passwordless login using conditional access in Azure AD?
That's definitely some feedback we've been hearing along the way. And oh no, there we go. Definitely feedback we've been hearing along the way, and something that we're working towards. It's not a conditional access policy available yet, but stay tuned.
All right. Back to Tarek. If someone is concerned about hearing that MFA could be compromised, how exactly does passwordless prevent against compromise versus traditional methods?
Great question. Back to the phishable argument that some of the more traditional MFA methods, for example, TOTP, time-based one-time passcode, what happens is I can render an experience to your end user that says enter username and password. And they give me the username and password, then I go play them back against Office 365. Then the next screen on the Azure AD side says enter your MFA code. I can then render it to you as an end user an experience that says enter your MFA code. You give me the code. That code is actually good for about a minute to 2 minutes. So for a whole minute or two, I can use that to play back against Azure AD. So I still fished you, and a man in the middle still benefited from tripping your MFA. And so the passwordless credentials that we mentioned earlier, there is nothing on the wire. Like if I played back to you, somehow you rendered to me a passwordless authentication experience, and I played back to you the outputs that we were talking about. When you take these signed things and you try to play them back against it, they're not going to work. You get a different identifiers for your session from the user's phished session. So it's overall addresses even the weakness in MFA. In fact, the FIDO Alliance itself, the initial draft of FIDO U2F was about taking phishability out of MFA itself. And then the passwordless options we're talking about implemented FIDO 2, which made it both two-factor authentication, not just a single second factor.
Thank you. Just kind of along the lines of the different credentials. So Libby, question on the Authenticator app. It happens so fast sometimes when you do the biometrics, like for example on the iPhone with your Face ID. So is there concern about accidental acceptance of a passwordless login? Is there work being done to reduce that risk?
So definitely inadvertent accepts of a MFA push notification is a concern. That's one of the reasons why with the passwordless phone sign-in on Microsoft Authenticator, we do show the user a 2-digit number on the screen of the device they're logging into. That user then has to close the loop by choosing that number in the Microsoft Authenticator app before they can enter their biometric gesture to complete the notification. So that's how we've tried to mitigate that scenario where a user might pick up their phone and it thinks that they're approving a notification even though they were just checking on it. On our roadmap is also bringing that close the loop experience to our pure MFA experience as well.
And we're also working on exposing more information about the location, yep, or the application that caused the authentication to happen.
Great. Quick one for you, Inbar. Where can people find documentation about the REST API for TAP in Azure AD if they wanted to customize the experience?
That's a great question. We have AKMS link for that. That's AKMS/auth method APIs, and we'll post that in the chat.
Thank you. Libby, back to you. I'm seeing a lot of questions about RDP and Windows Virtual Desktop and support for passwordless and these types of hybrid environments. So are there plans to add this capability? Do you have any other suggestions for a hybrid environment?
So first, in a hybrid environment, we strongly encourage, the existing passwordless credentials of Windows Hello for Business, and you can also use your FIDO2 security keys to log into Windows directly with a FIDO2 security key. So, for those devices that are hybrid joined, you can use and access on-premises resources through your Windows device directly. Coming in with RDP, that is something that is we're looking at and actively investigating. Unfortunately, I can't give you any good timelines on that right now.
Thank you. Tara, going back to you, if someone has some legacy applications that don't support MFA, what is their path in order to use passwordless, or can they use it today? Thinking of different legacy protocols and those kinds of environments.
So it's going to depend on the protocol, and part of if you haven't checked it out, check out the 10 reasons for going passwordless. If you look at number 6 on the journey and deployment journey, you will gonna have to do some reckoning around some of your applications. If the applications require a protocol that has passwords in the fabric of it, then yes, the user will need to know their password for those applications. LDAP, for example, there's no way to make LDAP passwordless, quote unquote. However, we're doing work, for example, to be able to translate a successful passwordless session into a Kerberos session. Now, and then you can do things like experience smart card deployment customers do when they allow smart card sessions to work but turn off password and so forth. So a big part of it is reckoning against the protocols. Certain legacy protocols, you will have to modernize the application. All you need to do is get it to modern protocols, SAML or OpenID Connect OAuth. If the application stays on the legacy protocols, there will be some work we're trying to do to salvage, and extend passwordless into these protocols. But then some protocols have the password in the fabric of the protocol itself, and it's at the end of the day sending some password in clear text to some backend. And so the thing you have to weigh is, and I also want to encourage you not to take an all or nothing approach. So, for example, let's say you do have 2 ERP applications that are fundamentally important to your organization. You cannot absolutely modernize them anytime soon. The owner has moved on, and it's very hard. Okay, then put your users on passwordless and have them remember the password or use the password once a quarter to get to these tools, as opposed to saying, no, I'm going to wait till I get rid of that app before I make anybody passwordless. There is so much gain from, like today in Microsoft, 99% of our usage is modern applications on a laptop, and you just never type your password. Most people forget their password. So I try to get to that place, even if you can't quite delete passwords altogether.
And just again, if you're using Federation versus Cloud Auth, is this the right way to move to passwordless? If you have ADFS, what should they do? Should they follow these same guidelines?
Great question. So we've done work to intercept the user and can offer them passwordless credentials. However, your applications may be doing certain patterns that, for example, they're passing the domain hint. So when the application invokes Azure ID, it's passing a domain hint that says this is contoso.com, and then we're configured for Federation for Contoso, so we immediately go to ADFS or ping on premises and so on. In this configuration, we published a set of guidance a few months back on how to disable the behavior of home realm discovery if you want to for certain applications, so that the user stops at Azure ID, types in the UPN, and then if they're passwordless, they're presented with the passwordless options. If they're not, then they're sent down to ADFS. So we recommend you make use of these. But even if you're a federated customer, Microsoft is a federated customer than Microsoft ourselves, and we're still highly passwordless. So there's still a lot of passwordless you can push through.
And I want to add one more thing to that. Temporary access pass also works for federated users. So a user who is federated but currently have a valid temporary access pass will not get redirected back to your ADFS or your IDP, and instead they can use that and go and register their passwordless credentials. And that can help you bootstrap users starting to use more of cloud authentication instead of going back to your federation.
Great, thank you both. Libby, questions coming through around the different FIDO 2 form factors. So will Authenticator app ever be a method you could use to log into your machine like FIDO 2 keys?
So I want to take a step back on that question because that's an excellent question. But let's talk about one of the promises of FIDO 2, which is that given the different transport methods that are part of the FIDO protocols, whether that's Bluetooth or NFC or USB Lightning keys, that connection from a key to a device that you're logging into really allows that creativity of how we can make these unphishable connections from device to device. So with FIDO 2, we're starting to see some great, cool new form factors on the keys themselves. For example, Ubico just showed they're working with a healthcare company to provide a little bracelet to do an NFC. You stick the Ubico key itself in the bracelet, and then you can tap to an NFC reader. So as we see more and more partners come on board in this hardware environment, we're going to start to see a lot of cool new solutions. We're going to see price points dive. I noticed that was a question come up in the chat about the cost of these FIDO keys. I fully expect, in a year we might even see FIDO keys as low as, $3 to $5 per person, depending on those transport mechanisms and biometrics and features that are enabled on those keys. So really one of the exciting things about FIDO is this industry coming behind our products and just using to unlock is to give us those methods to do the unlocking. Now the next question is, how do phones fit into that? For those of you who are following Apple's journey, they now support FIDO natively on a device. So the next question is, can we start to use those devices to unlock other devices? Can we use FIDO on the device, use the facial recognition? That's where we're headed. And then can we use a phone as a FIDO key to unlock a PC or your Mac or your Chromebook? I would say industry-wide, that is the general goal. We're not there yet, but definitely picking up momentum, and through the FIDO Alliance have a lot of forward progress there. It's a really exciting time.
Awesome, thank you. Ambar, just some questions around rolling out passwordless in a working from home world. Maybe Tarek too would chime in on this. How do we roll this out, in that remote environment? How can this help?
Yeah, so going back to some of the examples I outlined before about how customers are going to use it, the ability for customers to develop their own applications that do the identification, remote identification, having someone talk to the user remotely and verify their identity, scan their government cloud, government issued ID before they're issuing the temporary access pass. This is what we're seeing customers starting to look at for the identification before they're issuing the temporary access pass, and then eventually having the user register passwordless credentials.
Great, thank you.
And I think to also piggyback on something was asked in other questions is TAP works with UBI, right? That's kind of by design, and we kind of was one of the UBI, for those who are not versed in Microsoft language, sorry, is out-of-box experience. So the first sign-in experience into the Windows when you open the laptop. So someone asked about autopilot, right? So I'm a big believer in the autopilot vision. I'm just going to tell the user to go buy a Windows laptop from somewhere. They sign in the first time with their credentials, and everything happens. Right? They get joined to the tenant. So how do they get their first sign in without a password? And so TAP fits into all of that. So it is actually the only credential that will work from a Webflow in Windows UBI to kind of allow you to bootstrap. And then the idea here is to set up Windows Hello for Business out of that flow, and therefore they're passwordless from day one. So.
Thank you. Switching topics just a little bit, Libby, on FIDO 2 credentials. What support is there to use them with, let's say, Apple or Android devices that's available today?
So we do have a browser matrix. I think we can put that in the chat link that shows all of the interactions that support FIDO and also support some of the functionality that Azure AD requires with its FIDO implementation. As of right now, the platforms of coming out from Google do not support some of the pieces that we still need to do a truly passwordless implementation of FIDO. So Azure ID FIDO does not work in those environments. And we are working closely with Apple on implementing native FIDO support. Being able to use a security key with your phone is definitely in the foreseeable future.
Awesome, thanks. Tarek, some questions. If you're a large company, how do you manage the rollout of these passwordless deployments and make it easier, faster to do?
So we've been learning from customers who are deploying it, and of course, including obviously Microsoft ourselves. The Windows Hello for Business is kind of the big trump card when it comes to information workers. So it does take a bit of a muscle and a practice for customers the first time going around, especially getting to the right version of Windows, understanding that you kind of have to keep up with the cadence of updating your Windows 10 deployments and not just go to a version and stay there. But the other one is, I think, passwordless phone signing for mobile. We had issues and glitches in the public preview that kind of inhibited some customers from experimenting with it. Now we think it's a much more, in terms of configuration and rollout, is much more resilient and reliable. So we think those two should be, like, every customer should really be exploring. I need all my users on mobile to be using passwordless phone sign into because you save typing UPN and password both, right? And then all my users who are information workers with dedicated Windows machines should just do Windows Hello for Business. And I think it is worth the cost. And we have success stories from a 25K seat customer, as I mentioned in chat, from 150K customer, where customers have done that with those two segments easily. FIDO keys and deploying FIDO keys in scenarios like, for example, privileged users, frontline workers, remote workers. This is where we're constantly adding the ability to upsell. So we're trying to make it such that, hey, if I'm comfortably already using username MFA, how do I turn the user's attention to stop using the old credentials to the new credentials? So these are also capabilities we're adding ourselves. But in the meantime, I recommend phone sign-in and Windows Hello for Business.
Great, thank you. Inbar, question for you. I mean, people might lose, say a FIDO2 security key. With temporary access pass, is there a need anymore to require someone to re-register for MFA, or does this solve that?
So that's a great question. If your user is still using MFA or password in MFA and they have registered for passwordless authentication method, there is no necessarily a need to use temporary access pass to go and recover access to your account. In fact, if you've seen the user's authentication method blade in the Azure ID portal, which we have just refreshed as part of the recent announcement, you will see that you can now manage all the user's authentication methods. So if they're still using MFA and they tell you that they lost their phone, then you can actually go and register a specific, remove a specific authentication method from the user. However, temporary access pass also gives you the opportunity to let the user manage their own authentication method instead of you as the help desk, trying to read all the phone numbers on the phone and trying to figure out which method you're actually supposed to delete. So you can issue a temporary access pass to the user. The user can go then use it to sign in and go to the security info page and manage their authentication method, delete any method that is no longer relevant, register new authentication methods.
And then another question, how do I decide if I should use a FIDO2 key or an Authenticator app or Windows Hello? Do you have any guidance on that, Libby or Tarek, either one, on how do I pick which methods to use?
I'm going to put in a plug for our passwordless wizard at AKMS Passwordless Wizard, and that's a great opportunity to it'll walk you through step by step, like who are your users, what machines are they using, and kind of spit out some recommendations, as well as point you directly to the deployment documents and how-to documents for each of those credential types. Fundamentally, when it comes to which credential is best for your user, I love more the merrier. Give the user the credential that they have on the device that they're using at that point in time. You definitely, when you're starting to think about unphishable credentials and strong auth, you want to make sure your user at least has one primary credential and a backup credential. You know, ideally tap is only in that situation where the user just, you know, had their laptop bag stolen. And then whether you use a FIDO key or an MS Auth app, it kind of depends on what your organization has today. If you are using Auth app for MFA, go ahead and take that next step and enable passwordless. There's really no harm in trying. FIDO keys might require a little bit of investigation and exploration, but you know, that's also where the industry is headed. So might as well start taking your organization in that direction as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We are out of time. Any last words from the speakers?
I did want to mention
a last word. Okay.
Yes, I did want to mention that as part of things that make the deployment easier is the new GA features that you should take advantage of around credential insights. You can now track deployments. You can see who's registered, who's using, and so forth. So now you have a better handle on the success of your campaign. That's all.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all the questions. I hope we were able to answer a lot of them. Please use these links following the session, and I will also share the final slide of how to get the trainings and certification for security. Thank you all again.